Guys, so we're going to be graphing cotangent functions, which is similar to graphing the tangent functions. Notice even the shape is similar for the parent graph, except it goes in the other direction. And also note the difference with it between cotangent and tangent is the start and stop are different values. The start will equal to 0 and the stop will equal to pi because, again, if you look at the parent graph, for one period, it starts at where x is 0 and ends where x is pi. So it goes back to the actual graph itself, which again, you don't have to know, but fun fact. The difference between the x values is still stop minus start over 4, just like in tangent, because again, in one period, there are still 5 points. So broken up into 4 equal intervals, we'll be able to find the difference between the x values. So starting off on an example, I'm simply going to take my value in the parentheses and again, the start, set it equal to 0. And for the stop, set it equal to pi. So here I'm just trying to solve for x. X is being divided by 3, so I'm going to multiply 3 on both sides. And here I'll get x equals 0. So that's where I'm going to start for my x values. And then if I multiply by 3 on both sides here, solving for x, I'll get x equals 3 pi. So again, for the x values, there are 5 points in one period, and we only need to know one period because after that, it just repeats. Everything repeats in the graph. So I'm going to make a table where it starts at 0 and ends at 3 pi. And to find the x values in between them, I'm going to apply the formula above, which is the stop minus the start over 4, which is 3 pi over 4. So the difference between each x value will be 3 pi over 4. So each time I'm going to add 3 pi over 4. So 0 plus 3 pi over 4 is 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4. And I said this in the tangent graph as well. You don't actually have to include the pi if you're going to put this in the calculator. Just put 3 over 4 plus 3 over 4. Make sure it's in fraction form. So if you have a scientific calculator, it's that ABC button for fractions. 3 over 4 plus 3 over 4 would give you 3 over 2. Just bring the pi over. Or if you're doing it by hand, good for you as well. 3 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 4 would give us 9 pi over 4. And just to check that we're right, 9 pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4 does give us 3 pi. So um, one of the nice things as well, just like for tangent, is that the start and the stop of one cotangent graph, it always starts and stops at a vertical asymptote, which means it would be undefined for the first and last point of one period. So if I'm going to plug in the rest, I'm just going to replace the x with 3 pi over 4 and solve for the y. So y equals 2 cotangent x over 3. My first x value is 3 pi over 4. So 3 pi over 4 over 3. I'm going to work inside my parentheses, bringing down the whole 2 cotangent the whole time. So 3 pi over 4 times 3 over 1. I'm going to flip that into 1 over 3. So this 3 divides out. What I'm really just finding is the cotangent of pi over 4. Now, if you look in your unit circle, pi over 4, I'm going to look at the tangent value there. The tangent value there is 1. So for me to get the cotangent value, I'm going to take the reciprocal of 1. Well, if the fraction form of 1 is 1 over 1 and I flip it, it's still going to give me 1. And now that I've solved it, bring down the 2. 2 times 1 gives me 2. And for the next value, I'm going to find a place to work it out first. The next value is 3 pi over 2. So from here, I'm going to take 2 cotangent 3 pi over 2 over 3. So again, the same thing happens where I'm going to do keep, change, flip. The 3's will divide out, giving me 2 cotangent of pi over 2. Now again, I'm going to get the tangent value of pi over 2 and then find the reciprocal of that to get the cotangent of pi over 2. So if I look at pi over 2, which is on that vertical axis, the tangent value there is undefined. Well, the reciprocal of undefined is actually 0. So 0 and undefined are reciprocals of one another. So if I were to take the reciprocal of undefined, it would be 0. So the cotangent of pi over 2 is 0, and 2 times 0 would give me 0. So my second or my third y value is 0. And again, as long as there's no vertical translation or anything being added or subtracted outside of the parentheses, it pretty much follows a pattern. So the next one will be -2. So if I were to graph this, I would be at 0, 3 pi over 4, 3 pi over 2, 9 pi over 4, 3 pi. Again, the undefined just means there's a vertical asymptote there. 3 pi over 4 would be at 2. 3 pi over 2 would be at 0. 9 pi over 4 would be at -2. And I already know the graph's shape itself because, well, it doesn't change for cotangent. And from there, you have your graph.